It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one?
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. What you just saw is a snapshot of the kind of tensions shaping today's political debates. In that moment, you saw Jasmine Crockett speaking passionately and forcefully, presenting her perspective and challenging opposing views. Critics sometimes argue that debates like this can quickly become heated with strong language and sharp disagreements. On the other hand, you have Jim Jordan, who shifts the conversation toward a broader issue, the importance of protecting the First Amendment and ensuring open debate. His focus is on the principle that people should have the right to question, discuss, and challenge ideas freely. At its core, the hearing raises a bigger question. Who decides what counts as fact, and how misinformation should be addressed in public discourse? It's a debate not just about a specific international issue, but about the role of government, free speech, and the boundaries of public discussion. We're about to watch the full exchange, and I'll break down the key moments and arguments from both sides. And if you value open discussion and want to keep following conversations like this, consider subscribing for more analysis and breakdowns.
Write the language that's true, and you want to add in this other language. The proper place for this, as I've said again multiple times, is to put it in the minority views, which will be part of the oversight plan. But for some reason, that doesn't seem to be good enough for the minority.
Will the chairman yield?
Yeah, sure.
Just to pursue this point for a moment, this claim that this was fact-checking, wasn't this a suppression of New York Post reporting on the genuineness of the Hunter Biden laptop, which included the most incriminating evidence against a president involving family influence peddling that I think has ever been produced, and it turned out to be true. So what they were actually doing was suppressing facts, not checking them.
Suppressing facts and doing violation to the First Amendment and free speech rights of Americans. Who seeks recognition? Gentlelady, Ms. Crockett is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's so interesting to me that we all swear an oath to the Constitution, and we say that we take that oath seriously, but when it comes into actually doing something that looks like preserving that oath or looks like preserving the Constitution, we get a little wobbly, and I'm not really understanding what's going on. Freedom of press doesn't look like kicking out the Washington Post, or actually the Huffington Post has been kicked out. We know that the Associated Press has been kicked out, and now the Washington Post is not going to allow for op-eds in any way if for some reason they criticize the sitting president of the United States. What this is starting to feel like is a smaller version of Russia. And I am trying to tell you that we are nothing like Russia. We are not supposed to be like Russia, but that is what we've got going on. And I'm sorry, I know that some of my colleagues still struggle with answering the question of who won the election in 2020. And you may have felt a way when you had social media checking people and saying, no, Trump did not win the election in 2020. That is absolutely factual. And unfortunately, because some people got all riled up because they believed the lies, they ended up getting locked up because they decided that they were going to believe the lies. They ended up at the Capitol on January 6th, and they were trying to tear this thing apart because they felt like their country was falling apart in front of their eyes because for whatever reason, there were people in power that were peddling a lie about the election. We also know, and some of y'all may still say that COVID was a hoax. COVID wasn't a hoax. Tell that to the over 1 million people that died under Donald Trump's first watch. It wasn't a hoax. So no, I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people because you had people that didn't know anything about science and decided that they were going to put out whatever lies or propaganda or conspiracy theories they wanted to, and people died. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what is factual, and I know that facts hurt y'all, and I just wish we could get on the same page, but we do know during the presidential election that the president would not go and participate in anything if fact-checking was going to be a part of it, because he didn't want to be fact-checked. We know that the vice president got upset in his vice presidential debate when he was fact-checked. It used to be a time in this country that we as members of Congress or elected officials thought that it was okay to just tell the truth. Instead, we're pushing conspiracy theories, and some of them are killing people. It's the same thing that we have coming out of Doge. It's the reason that people are dying. It's the reason that farmers are losing their farms, because we continue to peddle conspiracy theories. It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem. This is the problem. That is not infringing upon free speech.
Will the gentlelady yield?
The time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
I'd yield to the chairman.
I just wanted to make a point. We've talked, gentlelady, previous speaker talked about factual information. We've talked about fact-checking. Fact-checking. You know what fact-checking is truly supposed to be in this country? The First Amendment. Not some expert who can sit on and look at posts and tweets and different things and say, oh, that's not factual, take it down. That's not how it works. Fact-checking is the First Amendment. Someone says something stupid, and that happens every day in this Congress. Someone says something crazy. Someone says something that's not quite true, not quite accurate. You know what the fact check is? Someone says something else, and you have debate. That's what we do in this committee every day. And this is the committee who's supposed to protect that fundamental fact. Real fact-checking is the First Amendment. Our Supreme Court has been clear about that. You don't like certain speech, the best speech for wrong speech is more speech. The best speech for false speech is true speech. That's how it works. You have a debate, and you trust we, the people, to figure it out, not some expert who's going to fact-check every tweet, every post, and we saw this in the Biden administration. We're seeing it in Europe now. We're seeing it in Brazil. That was the first bill we dealt with from the gentleman from California, his good legislation that we all agreed on. We're going to work on and put a good bill on the floor. So that's the key. That's what and we know it happened because, again, we had the guy who runs one of the biggest companies in the world, most successful tech companies in the world, tell us it happened. We had on the third day of the Biden administration an email from the White House to Twitter saying, take down this tweet ASAP. The government telling a business to take down a tweet, and the tweet, ironically, was from RFK Jr., who was going to be running for president against the guy in the White House. So he was saying, take down the speech of my opponent. That's not how it's supposed to work in this country. That's what we're concerned about. That's why it's in our oversight plan. And if you want additional things to look at, again, put them in your viewpoints. We're happy to accept them. We'll take everything Mr. Raskin has said today, everything the gentlelady from Texas has said today. We'll take everything the Democrats said. You want to put all that in your plan? Put it in your plan.
All right, let's get into it. That entire exchange felt like a clash between emotion and principle. It's the kind of debate that leaves a lot of people frustrated watching it unfold. Let's start with Jasmine. She speaks with a lot of passion. That's undeniable. She brings up several major issues, such as the 2020 election, COVID, and the war in Ukraine, and argues that misinformation around these topics has caused serious problems. Her position centers on the idea that stronger action, including moderation by social media companies, was justified to prevent false information from spreading. Critics of that approach argue that it opens the door to censorship and raises concerns about who ultimately decides what is true and what is misinformation. That's where the broader disagreement in the hearing really comes into focus. On the other side, you have Jim Jordan approaching the issue from a constitutional perspective. Instead of focusing on specific claims or topics, he frames the discussion around the First Amendment and the importance of protecting open debate. His argument is that free speech allows different viewpoints to compete in the public square, and that people should be trusted to evaluate information themselves. Jordan emphasizes the idea that more speech, not less, is the best way to address controversial ideas. In his view, the solution isn't restricting voices, but allowing open discussion so the public can hear all sides and decide what they believe. At one point, he references communications between government officials and social media platforms during the early days of the Joe Biden administration. He argues that these interactions raise important questions about the relationship between government and major tech companies, and whether those interactions could influence what content is removed or promoted online. The exchange highlights a deeper national debate, how to balance the fight against misinformation with the protection of free speech. One side stresses the risks of false information spreading unchecked, while the other warns about the dangers of government involvement in controlling speech. In the end, it reflects two very different philosophies about how information should be handled in a democratic society. So what do you think? Who made the stronger argument in this debate?